Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of the Make Life Better podcast here at CCI Systems. I'm Joe Smith, and today's topic, SD-WAN. And here to speak about SD-WAN, Andy Erickson. Andy, welcome aboard. Happy to have you, as always.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Happy Friday.
Top of the morning to you. What do you have on your cup today?
Well, we're trying to represent
Uh-huh.
SpaceX here this morning. A little dirty, but I don't wash my coffee cup, so that's kind of how it is.
Sure.
Apparently, that's a sin.
And I'm at the Dad Vice. Kids gave me that.
There you go.
The
I
smartest
like it.
words a kid will ever hear. Dad Vice. So, anyways, SD-WAN. We've been talking a lot about this, so to speak. So, real quick, just give us a little flavor of what SD-WAN actually is and what it could do for some of our customers.
Yeah, for sure. So, really, kind of high level, SD-WAN is kind of the next generation of technology to tie various different level of customers, clients, their network together, either between sites or really more importantly to their applications. As we've seen the shift towards cloud hosting, whether it's Office 365, Google, Dropbox. I mean the apps are endless. Voice. It's typically not hosted back at the main data center anymore. It might be hosted in many different data centers. So that's really driving a new requirement for the WAN itself. And so really that's one of the big drivers of a new technology, a new way to skin that cat, being SD-WAN.
So when you think about the type of business that the SD-WAN would service today, we do a lot of work for service providers. We work with enterprise and commercial. Is there kind of a one size fit all, or is one industry kind of more prevalent than the other? How would it work in those environments?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say that it can definitely be a solution for both a service provider and let's say an enterprise or a commercial account. So I'll give you kind of an example of both. So if you're a service provider and say you're providing a lot of managed services or circuits today, maybe via MPLS, this is kind of you can offer a similar approach to keeping your clients on your network, or I guess not on your network, with you, I guess is probably the more appropriate. And you can kind of extend your network outside of your traditional territory. So that's really exciting from a service provider perspective. If you're the enterprise side of the house or the end user commercial side, you can definitely leverage that to have more really redundancy at your branch or at your any location, truly to provide that application level of assurance as again, the applications aren't always at your main data center anymore, and you want to provide a bit more redundancy and uptime to your end user. So I would say we're definitely
Yep.
seeing in both.
Sure. So commercial enterprise, if you have multiple locations, pretty much a sweet spot for that. The SP, just explain that one more time. So, you think of service provider and, they have the pipe, the plant, it extends. So you had mentioned if they go outside their footprint. Elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, so historically, the service providers that were offering an MPLS type service to their clients are offering a lot of time most of the time it was on their own network, or they would lease some circuits, they would bring it back to their main core infrastructure. So in some cases that would be somewhat limiting or somewhat rather expensive, if you will, or there was a cost to that, or a higher cost. Rightfully so, there's a lot of benefits between MPLS and say an internet-based circuit, which we can
Sure.
get into later. But now with the MPLS option, they can really kind of extend their reach globally if they wanted to. If they had a customer that was in Europe and maybe in South America, along with all their North America clients, they could still tie out and reach that client that maybe had a headquarters in maybe Omaha or Minneapolis or Dallas. That same provider could still offer them the service and maybe local support and things like that.
Okay, so you had mentioned MPLS, so let's just get into that kind of set the framework for maybe where we're at today with MPLS and how that works compared to SD-WAN. And do you use them together, or is that something you change as you move into an SD-WAN environment?
Well, another great question. So,
Hey,
really
I'm the host. I ask the good questions. That's all I'm here for.
maybe I should ask you some questions. No.
Yeah, all right.
So, so that's kind of really one of the benefits of, one thing that we've been talking about here at CCI is just a modular network and the ability to kind of be agnostic in some cases, instead of having one big box do everything. Let's kind of break this thing up. So if we need to do upgrades or maintenance or what have you, you just affect that module. So we look at SD-WAN. It really can be WAN. I say WAN agnostic. A WAN circuit could be MPLS. It could be LTE. It could be cable modem. It could be DSL. It could be, any type of flavor of broadband, which is the beauty of it. And you can really, put in a policy that allows you to, shift traffic to keep your mission critical applications maybe still on your MPLS network, but maybe I want to offload, real-time video such as YouTube. Just put that traffic right on my low cost, high capacity, fiber to the prem service. So it's a great question. It's definitely, one misconception there is it should be an MPLS replacement. I would say that's definitely a wrong approach at it. Definitely because there's still some benefits of keeping your MPLS circuit around. A lot of times you're actually seeing your monthly recurring on that MPLS circuit actually drop down quite a bit just because of SD-WAN to keep those circuits. Okay. But it's definitely not a one-for-one replacement. In some cases it might be, but it shouldn't be looked at just as narrow focus as just that. So,
got it. So as we get into business drivers around SD-WAN, let's first talk about Andy Erickson. And obviously you're part of the team here at CCI. Tell us a little bit about your background and your experience in the industry.
You bet. So grew up in the northwest corner of Minnesota, just like a stone's throw from Canada. So we've been making some flags. That's why I got the Canadian flag and of course the U.S. flag here as well. And of course,
very well done, by the way. Where did you get those?
Right behind me is our shop, and we just made them out of 2x4s right behind us. So it's been a nice little project with the kids while we've been kind of stuck at home, if you will. So
wow, those could, I think you could sell those. Those are more than just a little project. Are you in business?
Well, surprisingly you say that. It's we put the pencil to it for the kids so they can actually see the cost of the wood and whatnot, the tools and what you need to sell them for to make a profit. So it's been a good real exercise around a business, even for my 10 and 12-year-olds. So it's been
awesome.
Really good.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So grew up in the northwest corner, grew up on a farm, and really kind of still farming with my two brothers today and my dad. So that's been kind of fun. We kind of reference that from time to time, and it's been good roots that have been I guess instilled in me for a very long time. So I guess from a technology perspective, did some Cisco Academy classes back in the 90s in high school. I think our high school is one of the first ones in the state to offer semesters 1 through 4 back in the day, and took those and went to college afterwards, got certified. Was lucky enough to meet a gentleman of Dave Wolf, and gave me my kind of a first start in the industry. Worked for him and his cooperative telephone company here just west of Alexandria. I was there about 10 years, and then had the opportunity to come work for CCI. So it's been a good run. I've kind of been very fortunate to be a part of many different technology changes from back when I first started. It was dial-up internet, and going through the 28.8 modems to 56 baud was pretty that was a big deal back in the day, and coming with some 256K broadband, nowadays that obviously doesn't really work very well. But
and the conversation has definitely changed. You're a great teammate, and when you talk about the flags behind you and some of the cool things you get involved in, the farming's also kind of a neat little tangent that sometimes we talk about. And when we talk about the Internet of Things, what you can do with farming, that'll be another episode. But wow, fun conversation at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of technology in agriculture, no doubt. So.
All right, so back to SD-WAN, and you kind of, I think you're instilling the idea of business drivers within your own children by making the flag. So with SD-WAN, oftentimes a common business driver will be, well, it's going to save me money. Not the number one business driver, at least identified by tons of surveys that have been done with customers that have put in an SD-WAN solution. It really ranks quite low on the list. So in your opinion and what you're seeing out there, what is kind of the number one or two business driver when you're looking at SD-WAN?
Right. So I'd say and I don't know if this is in the right order, but I look at SD-WAN as application assurance. What's really driving that is it enables the cloud, right? Whether it's locally housed in your local data center or out in Amazon, Microsoft, or there's really plenty of infrastructure as a service or SaaS providers out there as well. So being the applications are not in a centralized location, they're kind of all over the place. This allows connectivity to all of that, but more importantly, from a secure perspective. So security is a big one as well. Back, in the traditional network design with maybe a traditional WAN of MPLS, really your applications were all centralized back in your headquarters. And a lot of times all the traffic came back to headquarters. You had your big bad firewall there. You had maybe an IPS for intrusion prevention. You had different taps there. You kind of monitor of what was going in and out. But basically all your policy was done there. Mm-hmm. Well, now with I guess if you look at broadband in itself is getting, higher capacity options are out even in the rural areas. I look at myself, having fiber to the home, it's been great. I think there's more technology out here than there is in downtown Minneapolis in a lot of cases, right? So the options of higher broadband or higher service offerings has really enabled SD-WAN to be kind of reality.
Got it.
So that's a bigger driver.
So when you talked about a few things there, right? Cloud enablement. So when you do an SD-WAN solution, everything migrates to the cloud. And then because it's up in the cloud, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you brought in security. Naturally, when you're taking all the traffic from more of a localized position into the cloud, is it just natural that it becomes more secure, or are there things that you have to do from the customer perspective or the user perspective that enables that security?
So I would say that the security comes back to, of course, there's always multiple layers of security, and there's not one device that does everything. So kind of keep that in mind. But there's inherently some different policies that you can place to add another layer or level of security to that onion, whether it's at a branch, it could be at a job site if you're construction, it could be your headquarters, right? So it's so that's there. Might be, but going back to the centralized controller type model with SD-WAN versus having to manage all the devices individually, now I can push a policy out or an updated policy out to all my devices near real time versus having to manually touch all those endpoints independent of one another. So not only can you push the policy, you get telemetry back, or you're going to get data back. So if you see some anomaly that's going out on, out in Omaha, for example, at office, you can get alerted by that right away. You can identify what's going on much quicker than previously, and at that point you can adjust your policy near real time. Again, you're much quicker to respond and react and troubleshoot candidly. So I guess that kind of.
I think you touched on like just about all of them. So in my mind, network agility and visibility into the network elevates as you implement SD-WAN. And then one thing that we talked about prior is just the what we call closing of the skills gap. So you have the ability not to have your IT experts or your engineers all at that corporate facility. Now you can have them multiple locations and still have the same effectiveness and um, hands-on into the network. Correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'll give you an example. This is maybe it dates me a little bit, but I was in college and we were, of course, you're looking for different jobs, so you have enough money for the weekend, right?
Right.
And so one of the jobs that was maybe a half hour away from town, but really they were looking for somebody with like CCNA experience, basically, to if something went sideways on the router upgrade at the time, they needed somebody that could at least console in and be semi ready to go locally. Well, if I were to look at that today with SD-WAN, really a lot of times you're going to get a box that ships to headquarters. Maybe it drop ships right to the branch. It's going to have a serial number of X, Y, and Z. The network engineer would load that into the SD-WAN portal, I guess. Earmark it as Andy's data center, this personality, whatever it needs to do from a policy perspective. So when my device would check in, or they plug it in at the remote branch, it phones home,
Boom.
automatically
Yep.
gets the update, and at that point you don't need the certified engineer, if you will, locally. So
Sure.
it's much easier to deploy in rapid fashion, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, real interesting, and it provides that flexibility that we talked about, and maybe kind of whittles away on that whole idea that SD WAN isn't a cost saver. At some point, things become more efficient, you're more visible, and maybe not upfront as far as the number one business driver being cost savings, but man, I gotta believe when you get better visibility, more security, and the ability to push out fixes or changes into the network almost instantaneously, how does that not start saving consumer money, at least protect their brand?
That's it.
Um,
Yeah, there's definitely cost savings in there, and some of it just might be over time, not just say your MPLS circuit, for example.
so we already kind of talked about a few of the misconceptions that we had on our list, whether it was saving money or you had to switch out your MPLS network for in exchange for SD-WAN. But one of the questions that I have is, if you're considering doing an SD-WAN installation, how do you go about it? Is it something that typically you can handle in-house? How do you evaluate where you're at and what your capabilities are to move into that kind of network change?
So yeah, perfect. So really, it kind of, in my mind, it starts with a conversation of understanding your business and technical drivers and outcomes that you're looking to do. Maybe you're looking to expand and buy a company, overseas, for example, or even just maybe the next state. So you're looking to expand that direction, or hey, we have a local exchange server. We need to get that out to Office 365, for example, get that off of our local network. Understanding what some of those intentions are from a forecast or roadmap perspective, because as you look at the a solution architecture and design, I guess, phase or element of a project, sometimes that can get overlooked or even deprioritized, when really that should be front and center, and that's kind of like your bullseye that you kind of always map back to. So definitely the solution architecture and design is a key phase to this. The other part that comes top of mind right away is an SD-WAN readiness assessment. We talked about assessments quite a bit here with CCI. I think that's one thing we really pride ourselves on, the value the high value that brings back to the client. And really having been involved in many different SD-WAN deployments myself, the ones that did not have a readiness assessment typically they had more bumps and even more rollbacks, maybe
Sure.
more disruption to the business. And a lot of that was, you get into a maintenance window and you maybe cut one of the sites over, and oh man, we didn't realize that voice was routing this specific way, or this one application that wasn't identified as a priority all of a sudden is a high priority application, and even the client didn't know, so to speak. So no fault to anybody there. It's just this assessment really is geared towards identifying identifying common pain points that would typically trip you up in that migration. So
sure. So there's a couple different areas you touched on there. I think is what are the business applications you're looking to what are you looking to solve, right? What changes are you looking to make, and how is that going to affect your network and your business solution? But secondly, is your network ready for this kind of change? And it sounds like there's a lot of different things that maybe you wouldn't consider could affect a change like this that need to be looked at before doing it. You've been very strong about saying, I really don't even want to do one of these before I do some kind of network assessment. And you've had that experience of finding things, and I think you've had the experience on the other end where you didn't go through a network assessment and didn't end so well.
Yeah, in my mind, it's really a requirement, especially if you want a successful outcome, and not, in my mind, it's a little effort on the front end. Might take a few weeks or a month to fully complete. However, I believe that there's an exponential component to that on the backside of the project in general, and I believe overall you finish your project ahead of schedule versus bouncing through the rollbacks, and all of a sudden everybody all the way up to a board of directors has visibility into a project like this, when candidly they should understand that the project's going on, but hey, we got you covered. This isn't our first rodeo. We've done these before. The methodology is proven, it's tested, it's there. So I'm a little bit bullish on that, but it's because I've also been on the other side and got my tail whipped a few times too. So,
and that's why we love you, because at CCI Systems, we truly, our mission is to make life better. And so as you are bullish about doing the network assessment, it's for good reason. We strongly believe that you have to do that first to make sure the project goes well and you're successful, we're successful, and everybody. And that's what it's all about here at CCI Systems, making life better. So for Andy Erickson and CCI Systems, I'm Joe Smith. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you again very soon for the next Make Life Better podcast.